Okay, we're going to be looking at word classes, and the grammar book says that a word class is a category of words that are used for the same purpose or in the same way. And we're going to be looking at the 8 basic word classes, which are nouns, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, determiners and conjunctions. The first thing we should do is draw a distinction between the meaning of a word and its grammatical purpose in the context of a sentence. The definition of word class from the grammar book is this: a word class is a category of words that are used for the same purpose or in the same way. And the same purpose means the same grammatical purpose, and that's different from meaning. Let's look at an example sentence to clarify this point. The doctor has driven his car into a tree. If we take the word car, we can ask about the meaning of this word in 2 ways. We can ask what the dictionary definition of the word is, and we can also ask what word could be used in its place. I looked up the word in my dictionary, and this is what it says. A car is a self-propelled road vehicle designed to carry passengers, especially one with 4 wheels that's powered by an internal combustion engine. Automobile is a word we can use instead of car, so we could say the doctor has driven his automobile into a tree. These are questions for the meaning of the word car. Now, the grammatical purpose of the word car in this sentence is something different from its meaning, which we can see if we make a comparison between the first sentence and the second sentence here. The mug has left a stain on the table. If we look at the word stain, we see at once, of course, that the word has a different meaning from the word car in the first sentence, but the grammatical purpose of this word in the sentence is actually the same. Car and stain are being used to refer to a kind of thing. It doesn't matter what kind of thing they are actually referring to, whether it's a 4-wheeled vehicle, self-propelling, passengers and all of that, or whether it's, as my dictionary says, a mark or spot or discoloration. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that the word is being used to refer to something, to refer to a kind of thing. Okay. Well, it's difficult to understand grammar descriptions in the abstract. So we're going to start by writing some example sentences that should make sense of the descriptions coming later, the descriptions of nouns, adjectives, pronouns, and all of that. So here are 16 words that I've chosen to illustrate the grammar descriptions from the book. Before we get to those descriptions, we should make up some example sentences for these words. I started with an example for the word car. The doctor has driven his car into a tree. What you should do now is pause the video and write an example sentence of your own for each of these sentences. It's good to do this because when you try and put the word into a sentence, you'll be in a practical way thinking about the job of the word. When we come onto the descriptions, it'll then be much easier to make sense of them in relation to what you've done in putting these words into sentences. Okay, so pause the video now and write sentences for each of the words. Okay, so I'm assuming that you have made up an example sentence for each of the 16 words on the screen, which means you've got 16 sentences. What I'm going to do now is put the sentences into 2 groups. We've got the red words and we've got the blue words. There are 8 words in each group, and this is for a particular reason, of course. You should have 2 example sentences for each of the word classes that we'll be looking at later. But this is something we'll need to check. How to check? Okay, well, the first thing that we're going to do now is to put the blue words together with the red words. And I'll do the first one as an example to illustrate the importance of considering the word in the context of a sentence. Now the word that goes with car from this list is circle. And I've made two examples for the word circle to illustrate this point. First sentence, the doctor's driven his car into a tree. We know already. The second sentence, it's impossible to draw a perfect circle. In the third sentence, sheepdogs are trained to circle flocks of sheep. Now here's the question. Which of the sentences, 2 or 3, goes with sentence number 1? And that's a question about the grammatical purpose of the highlighted word. Well, the correct answer is 2. 2 goes with sentence 1. And that's because the word circle in sentence 2, like the word car in sentence 1, is being used to refer to a kind of thing, to a shape. In sentence 3, the word circle is being used to describe an action, and that's different. Now, we can use grammar terms to explain the difference here. We can say that in sentences 1 and 2, the highlighted word is a noun, and in sentence 3, the highlighted word is a verb. If we look at these words on their own, apart from a sentence, and ask whether or not circle is a verb or a noun, there's no way of answering. It's only when we put the word in a sentence that it makes sense to ask that question. And it's only in the context of the sentence that we can say that sentence 2 rather than sentence 3 goes with sentence 1 in relation to the way the highlighted word is being used. Okay, but I don't want to worry too much about the grammar descriptions yet. These are things we're going to come to, the descriptions for noun, verb, adjective, pronoun, and the others. What we have to do now is just intuitively put the blue words with the red words. Look at your example sentences and see if you can match them without worrying too much now in terms of about the grammatical purpose. When I say without worrying too much, I mean you don't have to look at the book and see if you can explain the use of the word in terms of the grammar description. Just look at your sentences and with a feel for the sentences, match the blue words with the red words. Okay, so pause the video now and do that. Okay, so I'm assuming now that you have matched the words, and we'll go through the words that are left, the 7 red words and the 7 blue words, and I'll talk through my own examples to prepare for the grammar descriptions. So the word that goes with eat is run. And we can see here that we've got the same problem as we had with circle, which is that the word run can be used in more than one way to serve more than one grammatical purpose. So we can ask again whether question 2 or sentence 2 or sentence 3 goes with sentence number 1. The correct answer is that sentence 3 goes with number 1. Now why is that? Well, we can say here that sentence 1, the highlighted word in sentence 1 and the highlighted word in sentence 3, in both cases the word is being used to describe a doing of something, an action, an activity. In sentence number 1, it's the doing of an eating. In sentence 3, it's the doing of a running. It sounds a bit strange to say the doing of a something, but that might be helpful to draw out the difference. You might want to say that in sentence 2, the highlighted word, run, is also being used to describe an activity. But if you do, you're thinking about the meaning of the word rather than the grammatical purpose. I'll try and explain this by making a comparison between these sentences. John goes for a run every morning, and John eats an egg every morning. Now, there's no doubt that an egg is a kind of thing. And we can see here in the sentence that egg is preceded by the word an, that little word which is called an article. John eats an egg every morning. When you look at the sentence above it, you can see the little word again before run. John goes for a run every morning. Okay, that's a clue to the grammatical purpose of the highlighted word. Let's go back to the sentences here. Now, the idea is that in sentence number 2, although the word run does, of course, refer to an activity, a run is an activity, it's referring to a kind of an activity. We said that the word car refers to a kind of thing. It refers to the four-wheeled self-propelling vehicle, and that circle in it's impossible to draw a perfect circle. That refers to a shape. And in sentence number 2 here, the word run, John goes for a run, refers to a kind of activity. But in sentence number 3, run is referring to or describing the very doing of that thing. And in sentence number 1, the word eat is referring to the very doing of that thing, eating. That's the idea. It's a little bit hard to get your head around the first time, but it's important to draw this distinction between meaning and grammatical purpose. Now, the other words that we've got on the list won't be as problematic as these, but I wanted to choose words that highlighted the problem of looking at the needing to look at the word in the context of a sentence to really get a sense of what work it can be used to do. But let's go on to the next word. Okay, so the word that goes with it is there. And here are my example sentences. I think you can probably guess what goes in the gaps here. These were my ideas. The dog started barking, it had seen a cat, and when the customers were ready, the waiter took their order. Notice here that the highlighted words refer back to the words that go in the gaps. This is what's important about them. They're referring back to or taking the place of those words in some way. Have a look at these sentences to get clear on the idea. In these sentences, you don't know what it and there refer back to, so you don't really know what the sentences are about. This is something you have to guess. But suppose I said something like, look at my new Rolex. I found it on the floor. Well, in that case, you'd know what I'm talking about. You'd know what the it is referring back to. And the same goes for there in the second sentence. Whose health are we drinking to? Well, you'd need to know what was going on in the conversation before this sentence to know how to answer that question. Okay, so let's go on. The word that goes with green is complete. Now, here are my example sentences. She was wearing a green dress and the party was a complete disaster. And we can see that the highlighted words here naturally go in phrases. A green dress and a complete disaster. Now, the important word in the first phrase, a green dress, is dress. The word green gives us extra information about the dress. Similarly, the most important word in the second phrase is disaster, complete disaster. And we can take the highlighted words out and we still have sentences that are okay on their own. She was wearing a dress, the party was a disaster. These sentences are already complete, but when we add the highlighted words, we have more information than we did to begin with. More information about the dress, more information about the disaster. Okay, let's move on. The word that goes with often is beautifully. And in this case I'm going to read from the grammar book to give some sense of my examples, why I've chosen the examples I have, or what the examples are supposed to show. The grammar book says that words belonging to this class tell you when, where, how, why, and so on. And my first sentence, Ingrid often has a lie-in on Sundays, the word often is giving you more information about, is answering the question how often. So suppose I said Ingrid has a lie-in on Sundays, and you want to know whether it's every Sunday or the first Sunday of every month, or whatever it is. You want to know more information about this. You ask me, does she always have a lie-in on a Sunday? And I say, no, she often does. Or you ask me how Mukesh sings. Does he sing well? Does he sing beautifully? Well, yeah, he does. He sings beautifully. That's what my sentence says. It gives an answer to the question, how does Mukesh sing? The often in the first sentence gives an answer to the question, how often does Ingrid have a lie-in on a Sunday? Okay, let's move on. The word that goes with from is after. And here are my examples. It's a 5-minute walk from the station. The weather comes after the news. The grammar book says that words belonging to this class link two parts of a sentence. That's around page 31 of the book. Elsewhere it says that words like this describe a relation, and I prefer that way of thinking about them. So I'll explain my sentences in those terms. If you think of the from the station, that's describing a relation of direction. It's talking about the direction of the walk. If you look at the after in after the news, that's describing a relation of time, or perhaps sequence. First there's the news, and then there's the weather. Now you can probably see what the book means when it says that these words link two parts of a sentence. The first one with from links the a 5-minute walk part with the station part, and the second sentence links the weather comes part to the news part. But personally I prefer thinking about these sentences in terms of the relation that's expressed by the highlighted word. But that's pretty abstract, so it's good to keep our eye on example sentences so that we don't lose sight of what we're talking about when we're talking about the grammatical purpose. I think the most abstract one of all is the next one. The word that goes with the is some. Here are my examples. Now in this case, the book says that words belonging to this class, at least sometimes, describe or say something about, tell us something about which. I'll give an example. I'll put the first and second sentence in context, in a kind of conversational context, to explain what this means. Suppose you're helping me fix something and I say, can you pass me the screwdriver? It would be strange to use this sentence if there were more than one screwdriver, because you'd not be able to decide which one. On the basis of the sentence, you wouldn't know whether I'm talking about the big screwdriver, the small screwdriver, or what is it. If I say, can you pass me this screwdriver? It has a feeling, this sentence, that there's only one, or at least that you already know which one I'm talking about. Similarly, if I ask for some advice, I'm leaving it up to you to decide what the advice should be. I've got a problem, different people will give me different advice about the problem. I'm not asking for a particular piece of advice, but for any advice, for some advice or other. So in both of these sentences we've got the idea of a which. It's very abstract, but notice too that the words here come before screwdriver, come before advice, and they're telling us a little bit about this which, about these words. very abstract, of course. Thankfully, the last example isn't quite so abstract, although there's only one more word in the blue box, which is when, so although and when go together, and these are my examples. Although I was tired, I couldn't get to sleep. They didn't teach grammar when I was at school. Now, if you look at these sentences, you can see that you can take shorter sentences from them. I'll show you what I mean. Here's one sentence. I was tired. Here's another. I couldn't get to sleep. We can join those sentences with the word although. Although I was tired, I couldn't get to sleep. When you join sentences together like this, the sentences are then described as clauses, not as sentences but as clauses. So the word although is joining these two clauses together. Similarly, I was at school. They didn't teach grammar. They didn't teach grammar when I was at school. The word when is joining these two sentences together as clauses of a longer sentence. Okay. Now, we said at the beginning that it's difficult to understand grammar descriptions in the abstract, so we wrote some example sentences to help us make sense of the descriptions of nouns, adjectives, verbs, and so on. So we're going to move on to the descriptions now and see what the book says about the kinds of words we've been talking about. At the top of the screen, I'll put the words that are used in the grammar book. The grammar book gives a list of example words for each grammar description. So for nouns, it gives the words house, dog, patience, father-in-law, Jane, airport, and Paris. Now these are all nouns, and the book says that nouns are words for things, feelings, people, places, etc. Notice the etc. at the end of this description. This is, in a sense, a very poor description, because unless you know how to continue the list, what comes after things, feelings, people and places, well, you're not sure what a noun is. So this isn't really a rule. It almost takes for granted that you know what a noun is, that you know how to continue the list. Well, this is an unavoidable problem in grammar. Many grammar description kind of assumes that we already know what it is we're talking about. It's just a question of how best to describe it, so this is a problem. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Verbs are words that express action, movement, change, being, having, etc. Again, there's the etc., so the assumption is that you know how to continue this list, you know what to include in it. The examples here are walk, drink, use, consider, melt, be, remain, have, seem. What do you do though if you don't really know how to continue the list, if you don't really know what's being described here? Well, the best thing to do is what we've done. You take some examples that the book provides and you put them into the context of a sentence, you make up sentences for them, and you see, have a think about, have a sort of play around with the word in the sentence, in other sentences, and see what it's doing. And then try and match the grammar description for verbs to those example sentences. Okay, here we'll go through the remaining descriptions. Pronouns are words that you use instead of nouns, often to avoid repetition. Here you need to know what a noun is to understand what a pronoun is. Adjectives are words that tell you more about a noun. Again, you need to know what a noun is. Verbs are words that tell you, adverbs rather, are words that tell you when, where, how, why, etc. Prepositions are words or phrases that link two parts of a sentence. Notice it says words or phrases. In the list it has out of and in spite of, which are phrases that perform the same grammatical purpose as sometimes just a single word. Determiners are words that come before a noun. and tell you how much, how many, which, whose, etc., another etc. there. And conjunctions are words that link two clauses or other parts of a sentence. Okay, now those are the grammar descriptions. Now it's time for you to try to apply these descriptions to your own sentences, which of course you'll have to do alone. If you have any questions, what you should do is write them down and bring them to the next class. And if you ask me to try and explain whatever it is that's a bit confusing, I'll do my best. Another thing you can do is post your example sentence and the question that you have, whatever question is worrying you, on the forum for Brush Up Your Grammar, and maybe another student can have a look at the question and answer it. That would be a really very good way to review and practice the stuff we're studying. Okay, so good luck with that, and I hope the descriptions now make some kind of sense.